It is, I think, very important to not conflate hope with optimism, because we can create false sense of optimism, and I don't think that helps. I think we can use science to align to what makes sense to do in this moment. We can listen to the voices at the margins, always, and align to their need. I see it far differently. I do not see people succumbing to nihilism in the face of insurmountable odds. I see people rising up. I see just incredible courage and joy in the collective and the collaborative effort. Yeah.
Welcome to the Regenerative Real Estate Podcast, a show about human environments and how they can be used as a force for good. Conversations that educate and inspire people looking for a different way to do real estate. I'm Neil Collins, and on the show today we have returning guest Aaron Fairchild, co-CEO of Green Canopy Node, to talk about leadership, service, and philosophy. Last year on episode 42, I sat down with Aaron Fairchild, who is one of the co-founders of the real estate development company Green Canopy. Aaron has a background in finance, and after learning the business from his dad, Aaron saw an opportunity to change the landscape of real estate by developing deep green homes. You see, by creating better housing, Aaron's theory was that other developers would need to play catch up in order to use their houses as comparable properties, and thereby change the market. And he was right. Over the past decade, developers in Seattle and Portland have continuously sought to keep up as Green Canopy has built hundreds of homes with features like all-electric, energy-efficient, and sustainable materials. The story doesn't stop there, however, which is why I was very eager to have Aaron come back onto the show. Since our last conversation, Green Canopy has merged with tech, innovation, and modular manufacturing company Node to continue to vertically integrate to further their goals to make construction more sustainable, healthy, efficient, and less costly. In our latest conversation, Aaron talks about how he views his role as a leader within the company and how Green Canopy Node and team is able to continuously evolve their values in order to create a strong workplace culture. We go on to talk about a phrase that Aaron mentioned in our first conversation, the arc of hypocrisy, and how it is something that we all must contend with, especially in the real estate industry, as we seek to make sense of this complex world. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Regenerative Real Estate Podcast. I'm really excited because we have Aaron Fairchild coming on again. Aaron, this is round number 2. Thank you for joining us again.
I'm really excited to be here, Neil. I'm excited to have this conversation, or to continue the conversation, rather. This is great.
Yeah. And what's significant to me is that the conversation that we had is continuously coming up whenever I talk to other people that have tuned into the show. They're just saying, Aaron just really wowed me. That was such an impressive conversation. And so I think that the work of what Green Canopy Node is doing is incredible. But for the path into the story that I think we should pick up today, I want to first start off with, what is the contribution that you're personally looking to make in life? And it doesn't have to be through the work of Green Canopy Node. I think the people that are on the show, and you're no exception, find their unique vocation through their professional work. But I'm curious what you see as the contribution that you're looking to make in the world.
Yeah, well, I can kind of sum it up in a couple ways, but I'm pretty clear on it. My desire is to help limit suffering and be of service to people and try and elongate the existence of life on this planet. Now, I say these things very deliberately in the sense that, I don't want to suffer from drinking from the punch bowl of my own hubris. Like, I'm here to save people or save the planet. That is just a little too much for me. I think that I have had family pass, and I know many of your listeners, including you and Alyssa, have been close to people that have transitioned. And if we kind of take that as a microcosm of what is happening over a longer period of time to humanity, the number one responsibility of those that are there for our loved ones as they pass is to hospice, which means to help limit their suffering and elongate the life that they have available and left to them. So when I look at that as a microcosm, you and I are going to pass. We're going to die. And so is humanity. And so is all life on this planet. These things are not meant to last forever. So our job, my job personally, is to do what I can to try and limit suffering in the world, create ever expanding ripples of positivity, love, and kindness. Try to, know that I'm going to fall down, right? But keep that orientation, and so that we can elongate the existence. So we're going into a period of increased turbulence. How do we find peace within the turbulence, and what can we do to limit the turbulence and the anxiety and stress that people feel as a result? I've also, in a more business setting, used different words when I describe what my personal purpose or approach is, which is I'm committed to entrepreneurship and leadership. How I define entrepreneurship is entrepreneurs look for pain and they provide solutions to solve for pain. If there is no pain out in the world, people will not align to what service or product that you have to offer. So how can you identify suffering and limit suffering in the world and provide solutions? And then leadership is all about service. How can we be of service to others? So in my role at Green Canopy Node, I'm the humble servant to our team, our board, our shareholders, our stakeholders, and community. And I try to live my life in that modality. And I fall down, but then I get back up.
As all humans do. And I find that you're quite intentional with your words, and the why you chose the word entrepreneurs seek out pain, because I think that we are classically trained in a normal way, or a more conventional way of saying this is like entrepreneurs are looking for problems to be solved. Do you see any discrepancy between a problem to be solved and entrepreneurs looking for pain?
No, it's nuance, not really. I think what the more acute the problem or the more acute the pain, the more in need that problem / pain is in need of a solution. It has this great, so, and this is where things get convoluted in the world of business. We turn pain and problems into more convenience. I want to try and make things easier to buy, and that is decidedly not the approach of a social entrepreneur. But you are also trying to identify areas of service where you can align to in people's lives, in our society, in our economy.
Do you find that there is a different approach by trying to solve problems or looking for the pain versus how do we express potential?
Again, very nuanced. I really appreciate your questions, Neil. I think that they run hand in hand. If we're not, if we are in the awareness that we're not living into our potential, part of our responsibility as a social entrepreneur, and you hear this time and time again, and it's absolutely true, is the better world our hearts know is possible is the potential, right? The better world our hearts know is possible is the potential that we're trying to align to. What you've heard time and time again is, in order for that better world to come forward, we actually have to start internally with ourselves first, right? So the better world my heart knows is possible starts within. So as just a real basic example of this in everyday life, if you want to teach somebody how to drive a car, it's really helpful to know how to drive the car yourself first, right? So if you want to manifest the better world our hearts know is possible, well, you have to do the work to manifest it within and actualize it within it first, if you have any hope of creating that ever increasing ripple of positivity out from you, right? So it is practice. It takes time. People don't change on a dime as much as we like to imagine they do. Even with tragedy, it takes work to change somebody from the inside out. But it is the potential. What you're talking about is what we're trying to live into today. But for not being in our potential, that wouldn't be an issue. So not being in our potential is the flip side of that coin, which is pain, suffering. When we're experiencing problems, pain, suffering, stress, anxiety, the flip side of the coin is the potential that is available to all of us to let go of our shame, to let go of our fear, to let go of our anger. And that starts within. And we have to align to that potential. Once you can, and once you start manifesting that within yourself, well, others take notice. And the depth of your relationships, they become deeper. And then you're doing the work. You're now, regardless of your profession, regardless of where you work, you are now manifesting that better world our hearts know is possible simply by focusing internally first and allowing those ripples to exude outward.
How much emphasis do you put on this internal and self-development as a leader within a company of people to help them explore your partners in the organization explore their own pathways?
That's great. I mean, there's a whole philosophical and structural approach to that within Green Canopy Node that we've developed over time, and it starts with it's culture, really. I believe you don't create companies so much as you create culture, and a company is simply doing collectively a job that one person can't do on their own. So anytime you bring other people into your endeavor, you start having the basis of culture. And if you are not careful about managing cultural evolution over time, like any relationship that you have, evolution will often take us in places we don't want to go. And that culture will evolve to become something that maybe is narcissistic or pathologic. And we see that in companies and relationships, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So a managed process of cultural evolution within an organization that's committed to, trying to manifest the better world our hearts know is possible, starts with the bedrock of culture, which I believe is a shared set of values, a guiding sense of shared purpose, and then a shared set of values. Linguistics helps, speaking the same language or same forms of language, and we get into that in culture. So at Green Canopy Node, we actually just got done with our mission, vision, values retreat, all company-wide retreat, where we re-anchor on our mission that was collaboratively established with shareholders, board, and team. We build homes, businesses, and relationships to help regenerate communities and environments. That's the mission of our company, of our team. So we have that shared sense of purpose. So we recalibrate to that, ask each other in workshop format, how do we see the mission actualizing in our day-to-day spreadsheet work or design work or in the field work, whatever it is. How do you see you aligning to that sense of purpose? And then we eventually get into values. And every year we recalibrate our values. We don't calibrate to the old ones. We actually blue sky it. Oftentimes they're derivative of prior years. But this year we have 4 new values. And we have a growing and bigger team, so there's a lot of excitement around that. Every value is collaboratively established in workshop format, real-time voting, and the whole company aligns to 4 values. And now everybody in our company can see their fingerprints on these values. Then we're now in a process organizationally of describing what each value looks like day to day. So how do we live into that value day to day? What does it look like? And we'll come up with 12 mantras, 3 per value. And those mantras will in prior years, basic, seek first to understand. Check your ego at the door. They're mantras, catchy. Now, what we're doing when we're doing this is creating shared language, shared linguistics, along with shared sets of values. And then the mantras are truly norms. They're norms of behavior. They're normative. But anyway, once we get through with that process, we go into our first cultural community review, where 360 review, and we give each other feedback on how we are living in to our values as a team member. And it's an opportunity to continue to create alignment to those values with this crew. And then every month we do a leadership workshop around one of the mantras. So this is a long form answer to your question. This is how we actually have created structure that allows people to self-actualize within a community that's diverse, inclusive, different people coming from different places, different countries, and bringing them together into an opportunity where they can also see themselves within the organization, but then be held accountable to those values that they contributed to. So that being held accountable by their peers, by our friends and our colleagues, allows us that opportunity to reflect and start doing the deep internal work. And the reviews, you can't get a promotion, you can't get a raise. These are just simply cultural community reviews, and we do it twice a year, aligned to values.
What really stands out there is just the emphasis on relationships within that culture, and why I think it's really important, and what we're really building up to is really trying to help people and wrap their mind around regeneration, because it is an approach that is in alignment towards life and in service towards life, using your words to enable a system or people or a community to self-organize and co-evolve. And where I want to draw more of a parallel, because you do work within a very physical industry, that there are sticks and bricks and you're building things and you're aggregating and allocating capital. In the world of sustainability, deep green, regeneration, there is a meme that is going around that I love to get your thoughts on. And I'll preface this with Bill Reed of the Regenerative group is saying, and they do incredible work, there's no such thing as sustainable real estate. And he really sees buildings as acupuncture points on the planet. But the notion that regeneration isn't about doing less bad, it's about doing more good. Where do you kind of wade into the philosophical waters on that saying?
Well, I completely agree with was Bill. What was it? And I've always been very careful on how we say we build sustainable homes. We build more sustainable. Again, trying to get outside the punch bowl of our own hubris. And I completely agree. There's no such thing as a building that does more good for the earth than it. As an example, if you did a LCA, life cycle analysis, on just a solar panel, you will see a dirty stream of assembly, essentially, methods and materials. And solar is an important tool. So how do we reconcile that? I mean, it sucks. We want pure solutions like, okay, regenerative agriculture. We really get that. Everybody understands how wonderful agriculture and regenerative agriculture is. And it's a simpler form of solution to think about than real estate and sticks and bricks and all the complexity there, because you're actually growing, and we do know how to restore and regenerate brown fields. But anyway, we know how to do that. In the world of real estate, it is truly an extractive process. We could do hay bale buildings, but at scale, then you start getting countervailing issues. Where are you growing the straw? The straw is not being used. And now can we do skyscrapers out of it? How many floors can we do? So there's smaller scale, but we have a large population. So how I've over the years, you get called to task on this. Well, wait a second, your home it wasn't quite, it should have been, you call yourself green canopy, right? But your homes aren't really green, and they, the third party certified to high standards, net zero energy ready. We've done all, LEED platinum, so all the things, and we still have people point their fingers at us. And I get it. I completely get it. The metal has to come out of the earth. There's concrete in these foundations. And it is an extractive process. So how do I reconcile that? Well, it's the notion of the arc of hypocrisy, and that there's no getting off it. As soon as, maybe your mother told you this too, Neil, but mine did. Don't point your finger at anybody because you have four pointing back at you, right? So as soon as you start assuming, number one, that you're doing the Lord's work and it's infallible, or you start pointing the finger at other people, you've forgotten that you are on the arc of hypocrisy with everybody else. Nobody is living a pure existence, and in a way that these solutions can be scaled to broad sets of a broad population. So that's how I've tried to frame conversations when I'm talking to people. It's like, listen, Green Canopy Node, we are on our arc of hypocrisy. The arc of hypocrisy is actually the inverted mirror image of the arc of impact. What is the pure impact play versus the greenwashing play? And if you want to get further down, right, the arc of impact and create more and more positive impact, which means you want to recede down the arc of hypocrisy. But let's give ourselves all a lot of grace, and each other, especially those that are in the process of trying. If you're authentically trying to recede, or let's talk about it in its inverted positive term, go further along the arc of impact, then let's have grace with each other and help each other, so that we can do more collectively together. versus tear each other down and point fingers and say, well, there's no such thing as a sustainable building. I understand that. How can we work together to improve these things and create more regenerative outcomes, especially at the community scale?
In our last conversation, it was fun to actually go back and listen to that one to prepare for this conversation, because you had said something about the art of or the arc of hypocrisy. And I'm not even sure if you're saying the art of impact or the arc of impact, but you said the arc of impact is the arc of compromise. But I wrote it down in my notes as the art of impact is the art of compromise.
That's beautiful.
Which is an amazing kind of play on.
That's beautiful.
And I had to tumble that one around in my head, because I do see that there is an art into both of those, of compromise and impact.
That's beautiful.
And it's your words, and I'm not sure which one that you wanted to use, but I can see both of them. I'm curious how you really started to vocalize and put words to something as I'm going to call it as profound as the arc of hypocrisy, and realizing that we're on it and we're not going to get off of it, because that is structurally how this world is aligned. By no choice of ours, we're always going to be on this arc.
Yes, and there's more there, but to just answer your primary thought, it's a term it's a phrase that I've coined, designed to be provocative. Clearly, I come out of the environmental left, deeply progressive liberal community. That is also vilified for being elitist. And I see that elitism in the larger community. There's plenty of fingers to be pointed around on both sides. But when I've been in conversation with other people that are like-minded to come out of the similar subculture of environmentalism, I want to temper the conversation, because I understand humans want hopeful messages, and those are the messages and the voices that get asked to talk a lot or speak a lot. Paul Hawken is a great example of that. Wonderfully inspirational, hopeful message, and so I don't think arc of hypocrisy is going to get much airtime, because it's actually decidedly about being comfortable with hopelessness and to embrace the hopelessness of an existence, meaning you will die, we will die, we will suffer, we will get old. It's an Eastern philosophical thought. But once you can embrace the hopelessness of it, then what happens to me, what I believe, is that it releases a certain amount of positive energy. The fear, the religious fervor, the ideology starts to dissipate. And what starts to come out, the energy that starts to come out and come forward, I find is love and acceptance and grace and tolerance for more people, and an unlocking of our ability to actually align to suffering in a way that is not, again, assuming that we can solve all of our problems, but what about just the one right here? Or what about just having strong, deep relationships and the people that we work with and communicate with, and how wholesome that feels? A lot of that is through letting go of fear, anger. And then people say, well, if I'm not afraid, what is going to drive me? If I don't have that anger, then where does my ambition go? How can I get into solving these problems? Where will my drive go? Will I be able to start the company? If I just feel people will just become nihilistic. We have to give hopeful messages. Otherwise, people won't do anything. And I cry foul. I do not think that is the case. I think people want to be told what we really believe, what we really feel, and that people want to align to trying to limit suffering. When we see and when we're confronted with real suffering, I see more people than not trying to help. But it creates this desire to move, not apathy, not like, oh, I'm out. Rarely does that happen where I'm going to fulfill every hedonistic tendency I have, damn the torpedoes and everybody around me. I don't see that as the response when confronted with the reality of a situation that is unavoidable, our own mortality.
And that's I think an interesting point, because the arc of hypocrisy, what I do like about it is that, especially couched within the world of real estate that we both are in, where people are looking for this perfect product, where you shifted the focus to this is our process. And I think the arc of hypocrisy, what it does for me is it invites a spaciousness to give yourself grace towards the process. However, there's a slippery slope that you seem to be hitting on, is that if it is inevitable, a demise or a problem that is just insurmountable, our species will die, we will die.
Bring it forward. Bring it forward. We're going to blow past our 2030 goals and our 2050 climate goals. That's going to happen. We're just going to blow past that. So then what?
So then why would we not fall into this nihilistic and hedonistic world of, well, what's the point?
Right.
Let's you seem to be saying, we're refracting towards positivity and love, rather than just like absolute chaos.
Right. I mean, that's fair. That's that human fear perspective that if we believe, nothing can be done, then no one will do anything. But I am proof positive that's not the case. I don't believe that nothing, number one, can be done. I think lots of wonderful things can be done. And I believe we're going to blow right past our 2030 climate carbon goals. But boy, I am trying on many fronts to create solutions that limit carbon emissions and store carbon. These are and we're working with communities. And yesterday, we had our 30th K-12 mass shooting this year alone. Do you think that's going to happen again? And if you do, are you just going to throw your arms up and say, well, it's not? No, we can still activate. So this is how I think about hope. And I'll quote Václav Havel, Czech poet, philosopher, became president. It's got a story. That his definition of hope is decidedly not optimism. Hope is the conviction that what I'm doing makes sense, regardless of the outcomes. So that's somebody that understands outcomes don't matter. We're all going to die. What matters is this present moment. And what did he do? He became the president 2 terms. That's not nihilism. That's not nothing. He was revolutionary. And you have to have the conviction that what you're doing makes sense. Makes sense. Regardless of what happens. Otherwise, you will live a joyless life. I can imagine that joy can be found in the darkest of places, of which I have yet to really journey. I'm not in Ukraine. If you can let go of the fruits of labor, let go of the future, and just be mindful of the present moment that you are alive. And it is, I think, very important to not conflate hope with optimism, because we can create false sense of optimism, and I don't think that helps. I think we can use science to align to what makes sense to do in this moment. We can use social science. We can listen to the voices at the margins, always, and align to their need. So, I see it far differently. I do not see people succumbing to nihilism in the face of insurmountable odds. I see people rising up. I see just incredible courage and joy in the collective and the collaborative effort. Yeah.
That's incredible, because the overarching temperature that I find can come up of how we are oriented as a culture and a society is that people are in service towards the economy, which is in service towards finance, which is precisely the wrong way around. Like we're all in agreement. I think everybody listening is like, how do we do real estate that is in service to life? And finding that hope is a worthy endeavor, rather. And this is a new concept for me of decoupling hope rather than optimism, because I find that hope is
Right. Yeah. Cornel West talks about it as virtuous hope. Just hope in and of itself as a virtue, right? The virtuous hope. And what is a virtue? It is action oriented. So hope isn't something we think or feel. Hope is something we do. The virtuous action of hope is doing. The conviction that what I'm doing makes sense, not what I'm thinking. That's more optimism. And it tends towards Pollyannish. I don't let's just ground ourselves in the moment here. We got things to do. We got financial systems to change. We've got paradigms to shift. We've got cultures to dismantle, and that's real work. And I think, I think we can all get there.
Let's come full circle back towards working on problems and pain, because you have a real estate company that I know you're looking at ways in which you can scale your impact. We've talked about how you're looking at creating a platform in which can handle growth to different markets, and how you can control supply chains and make deep green impacts through sourcing of materials. And I'm curious how you see this as we are fallible as human beings. We are problem oriented and throwing out a solution without understanding the externalities and the ramifications of that. And we know that growth can be chaos, and it's hard to right a ship that is in movement. So how do you reconcile that you're at the helm of an organization that is looking to commit themselves to a process, but there's still going to be externalities that we're not foreseeing? How do you continuously right course?
It helps to be on the leading edge of the course, because you tend to see it sooner. You tend to see those externalities and their impacts more quickly. So you do have time to adjust. So just as an example, biodiesel just seemed like a great thing at the time. Everybody thought it was this wonderful thing. And then how do you reconcile that with our agriculture and decoupling the pricing? And suddenly, that wasn't really too good an idea. Every industry has its like, whoops, we went the wrong way, right? And those that are on the leading edge of that industry feel it first. And why I think that's a good thing and versus a bad thing is when we see it coming, we have an opportunity to react. And I suppose if it did kill us, well, then those that are further behind now have fair warning. And I think it's hopeful for them too. So maybe it's not a better place or a worse place. It just is. And going forward with the grace that we're just trying and we're going to make mistakes. We're looking at, I'll give an example. I personally think it's a wonderful solution, cross-laminated timber. And can we create product that is scalable? And we're working with the cross-laminated press manufacturers, the primary manufacturers. Well, who's to say we don't find out, down the road? And everybody went, well, there's glues. You've got glues in the, okay, there, we're on, here we are on the arc. So we're trying to do more good. And we want to adjust as we're, following our hearts forward. We want to adjust to what makes sense, recognizing that we're within structures. So there's finance is a huge, huge component of real estate. Publicly traded home builders, the majority of their board members are folks from Wall Street, not other home builders. That's a thing, right? So the world of real estate and home building is really about moving capital. And it's heavily capital intensive. And that's why it is, one of the racist categories in our country, because the capital tends to stay with folks that are white, and then they create laws that help maintain their capital in the real estate world. So we are in that world. This is the world that I operate in. We work within these structures and we try and bend them over time. If you succumb to the guilt associated with, where capital comes from, you just won't break loose. And capital is you've heard the phrase, it's hard to herd cats. It's really hard to herd cats, and that in the world of real estate is what you're doing, from buying, building, designing, creating product, cross-laminated timber. Well, at one point along the way, it was told to me the best way to herd cats is to move the milk. And then they all get in line, right? So what is milk to real estate but capital? If you got capital, everybody in that diverse ecosystem of players suddenly get in line. So for us as an organization, it's really important to be in that vertical and to be deploying capital and raising real estate investment funds. So Cedar Fund, our Cedar Fund, is a real estate investment fund that invests in developing only net zero energy ready projects. And one of the projects that fund owns is a 7-unit row house, net zero energy ready, in the heart of Ballard. And we may have talked about this before, that we're renting to families that earn 60 and 80% area median income in the heart of one of our city's most opportunity-rich neighborhoods, which means exclusive. It's an interesting bend of capital and aligning it towards something like that. So our next real estate investment fund, we're conceiving to be similar. We self-constrain the fund to invest in only certain types of assets. And then, throughout our integration or our organization, we have acquisitions teams and underwriting teams. We have feasibility and design teams that all are coming together to make these projects possible. And then our product team, their job is, how do we make it more sustainable and less expensive by doing this stuff, by really harnessing the power of manufacturing. And manufacturing is in and of itself a dirty word, So here we go. We're going to harness the power of manufacturing to do some good. And that is truly what we're trying to do, is slowly bend cost curves so that people of all income levels can afford to live in, more sustainable, more regenerative, and hopefully at the same price or less. Ideally, wouldn't it turn our world on fire if everybody thought a deep green, super quality home built beyond code. So it's better than code. It's built beyond, is less expensive to buy and own. Suddenly now you're talking market transformation. You're talking paradigm shift. That's what we want to do and demonstrate organizationally that we can. When we're committed to a cause, that we're virtuously hopeful, focused on this present moment, outcomes, we have to make contingencies, and we're making them right now. We've got inflation and interest rates going. So you have to make contingencies based upon what you think, but, stay focused, do the work.
Somebody once said the arc of impact is the art of compromise, however.
Which it truly is. And I want to just say real quick, arc of impact, arc of hypocrisy. You have coined art, and I sure as hell like that better. It's the poetic version, the art of impact and the art of compromise. It's beautiful. And it gets to the same point. Yeah.
It really is. And an interesting thing that is coming up for me is this manufacturing process, because I think that is an identified area that the industry is saying this is the pioneering route and how we're going to provide affordability and we're going to drive more efficiency through this process. And it's almost being treated as the panacea towards a lot of the problems out there. But with it comes, does this weaken resiliency of communities? Is a bunch of folks in their little pickup trucks going to build houses a more resilient system than a centralized manufacturing plant that within an industry that we know is cyclical?
Right. No, that's a common refrain. So I hold a slightly different vision of how we want to enable communities to do what they do. The facts of the matter are we have a labor shortage in the United States that needs to deliver millions of units of pent-up demand, both rental and ownership. So we've got a supply-demand imbalance that's likely going to get worse as we trip into this recession. And because you have a labor shortage, that's a driver of costs, right? And it makes homes less affordable. What if it was easier to get into the trades so that more people could access great jobs on site? So that's our vision. If we can harness the power of manufacturing, everything still has to be put on site on a foundation. Somebody has to, that's going to happen. Until we get robots, maybe at the fringes, maybe at the margins. Most of our housing will be assembled with hands of individuals and community members on site. And our vision is that they will be using enabling software to put the pieces together that we manufacture offsite. So our vision is not that you're going to displace workers. You're actually going to enable more workers to build housing at the community level because they won't need as much experience. Now, what does that do to the labor unions? The labor unions, the carpenters unions. Well, they will be the first ones to learn the enabling software, I am sure. It will be, at some point, it will be optical recognition with your phone. With positive confirmation bias. Was this assembled properly? Your phone will tell you. So now we're talking about really lowering the threshold by which new workers can enter into good paying jobs, and making the barrier to entry available to everyone, women, men in their local communities, able to assemble housing that's not our bygone notion of manufactured housing, but something that looks entirely different. And by the way, that stores carbon. Cross-laminated timber, that fiber in your house is a carbon solution, and it stores carbon like we mine gold extractively, melt it down, create bullion, and store it in Fort Knox, bygone era. But today we need to mine carbon, draw it down from the atmosphere into standing trees. And we do that. And we know the science is clear. The more we build with wood, the more trees are grown, and at the stages that we need them to be grown. So build with wood. Well, when we cut them down and put it into cross-laminated timber, it's now storing carbon in the Fort Knox that we need to do to ensure that we grow more trees and then store more carbon. And that carbon that's stored is in our housing, in beautiful biophilic design, biophilic area that you get to be surrounded by. It's a solution that we're really excited about. But again, it's no panacea. It's impure, right?
So I got a question recently from a listener that was asking, why do we talk about agriculture and land management on a real estate podcast? And I see them one and the same, because if you're talking about our need for fiber, and as one potential solution to capture carbon and how we're going to build our needed housing supply, then what does it have to do with agriculture? And what we're really hoping our message of potential change here is, if we're going to be building with wood and we see this as a solution, how might we begin to manage these resources in a very different way so that allows for that kind of sequestration but comes with a positive benefit of a virtuous feedback loop for the ecosystems and not just straight up ecological degradation.
We've got a lot of sustainably grown forests and family farms that can prove that there are other ways to do this, and in ways that are more sustainable and regenerative, for sure. And we're figuring out how to ensure that they're rewarded for that by trading the carbon stored in the standing trees as another means of revenue for the family farm that's doing sustainable forestry, et cetera. So there's a pathway of greater, more regenerative forestry practices. And I'm really proud that EcoTrust is a shareholder in Green Canopy Node. And they have spun out or have EcoTrust Forest Management, which this is their business. So I would encourage you to talk to EcoTrust EFM. They're great and can elaborate on that more. What I want to do is create that pull so that we can continue to have more sustainably grown forests that are then harvested, and then we're storing that carbon at more regenerative cycles.
And that is the story that I think is extraordinary about what Green Canopy Node is doing, is where I see the pioneering edge of the industry. It's not, I wouldn't really call it manufacturing. There is a stigma to that. It's been around for a long time, manufacturing of homes, but what you're doing to drive supply chains through this process in a way that's not dehumanizing, which is where the stigma comes from for me whenever you talk about manufacturing, of like, how do we reduce our labor costs through mechanization? It's how do we drive more impact through looking at the 50 shades of gray that comes along with affordable housing, the 50 shades of gray that comes along with carbon sequestration, the carbon imbalance that we have, and how do we continuously commit ourselves to this process of communal transformation, and ultimately, where I see a lot of alignment is creating transformation from a transaction, and aligning the supply and the demand.
That was well done. Brought us right to that point. It starts with a transaction, and it starts with an agreement between typically motivated buyers and sellers. and at all levels of income, right? And from there, it really is a systems approach, and it can be nothing but a systems approach. And you have to take that whole value chain as a system. That how can we realign or work? If you think about it as a system, as an ecosystem, how do we work with the different watersheds that support this ecosystem and create greater vibrancy? So in the world of real estate, I think about it as an ecosystem, and that the real estate broker occupies a watershed within that. The finance person occupies a watershed. So often the finance person isn't talking to the field person because they're in a different watershed. But you have to be able to align the finance. And I'm not talking about just mortgage. I'm talking about the investor base that's buying and developing. And at the community level can be the same thing. So if the community is buying and developing, how are they ensuring that they're communicating to all the necessary watersheds within the ecosystem to deliver more regenerative outcomes? Holy cow, man. And I found my career a long time ago, and it's good because I could live 2 lives in this career, at 3, and still not, the profundity is so cool. But what we're trying to do is just what are the major watersheds that we need to be in to create alignment, to get more regenerative outcomes, so the community, where it actually starts, so that the community or the investor base pulls our product in a more regenerative manner, so that you're trying to work within that structure.
This is my enduring call to action for the listener is to embrace the arc of hypocrisy, as well as embrace the complexity, and to know that we need to link arms. We need everybody's energy and their intellect and their desire to commit themselves to be a part of that process and in service towards something greater than financial wealth accumulation, is what rears its head within our industry all the time. I mean, that seems to be the dominant narrative. So Aaron, this has just been a lot of fun. It's like getting shot out of an intellectual cannon, and just trying to hold on to figure out how I can best keep up with where you're going. But I'm in awe of really the deep thought that goes into, or just the intentionality that goes into building Green Canopy Node, and how you're moving these pieces on the board, and how you're really just playing around with the puzzle.
Let's real quick. I would be remiss. Let's just be clear. I am not moving any pieces. That is not me. I get to work with an incredible group of people, and it is throughout our organization, and we make decisions in a collective manner. I am blessed to be so situated. So yeah, I appreciate the intention, but it ain't me.
Yeah, servant leadership. I think that going back to the culture that you're able to set, it's admirable, and I appreciate it. And I hope other people that they can start to see their own internal locus of control of self-development in order to catalyze external change.
This is so fun. Thank you, Neil. I mean, this has been a really fun conversation. And locus of control, art of compromise. You're dropping linguistic pearls, and I love it. I can't wait to have more if we ever get a chance. Thank you.
We're going to do it again. I think that would just be a delight. So, Aaron, thank you for coming on. That was Aaron Fairchild of Green Canopy Node, gracing us with his presence for the second time on the Regenerative Real Estate Podcast. What an absolute treat. I just love every minute of that conversation, and I'm so glad that you got to tune in for it. I want to let you know about something that Aaron told me going into this conversation is that he is going to be attending the Regenerative Real Estate gathering that we have planned August 24th through 27th. I want to invite you to this. It is going to be an incredible gathering of passionate people that are really interested in co-creating this field of regenerative real estate. I'm talking about the developers, the real estate agents, the lenders, the earth tenders. We want you there. If you are working in this field, we want to collaborate with you and mastermind with you. And I cannot think of a better setting than the Riverbend Farm right outside of Portland, Maine. This is going to be an event for the year, and I just cannot tell you how excited that I am that the Latitude change agents are going to be there and other people working in organizations and companies from around the country, Aaron included. So if you are at all interested in this gathering, please visit our website at chooselatitude.com and go to our journal, because that's where you're going to be able to find more information on this. We are trying to make this as accessible as possible for the pricing. The pricing does include carbon offset for travel. We have options for people that live within the area that are going to be commuting in. And if you haven't heard about the Riverbend Farm, where the ecology school is housed, go back and check out that episode with Drew Dumpsch, because it is another one that is just forever emblazoned in my memory and one for the record books. I hope to see you there. Hey, thanks for tuning in to the show today. If you want to follow our work at Latitude, you can follow us on Instagram at latitude.regenerative.re, and mine is at I am Neil Collins. We inherently believe in the potential that comes from connecting value-aligned and purpose-driven people together in community. That's why I encourage you to join our mighty network and introduce yourself to the other people working across the globe to advance a more regenerative, resilient, and beautiful world. Here, we want to know what you're working on and what inspires you. Through this platform, you can attend live events, take courses provided by our podcast guests, and create connection with other people and businesses that share your same passion. To join, find the link in our show notes or visit our website at chooselatitude.com. If you'd like to support the show, please share it with your friends and be sure to follow us on your podcast app so that you always have the latest episode downloaded. Another way to support our regenerative field building is to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Positive ratings help attract amazing guests, and they can be the deciding factor for someone else to tune in and listen. And who knows, maybe this is the kind of motivation that it takes for them to finally decide to align their profession with their sustainable and regenerative values and become a positive force for good within their own community. This show was produced by myself and edited by Anthony Wallace and offered as a part of our work with Latitude Regenerative Real Estate.